Well, greetings and salutations, everyone from across the world, and welcome to another edition of LifeWave Connect. Now, you're looking at Jim Caldwell, your host this go around, and I'm happy to report that Emily was gracious enough. Emily Hollingshead, of course, always hosts LifeWave Connect every other week and does such a fantastic job. When I heard what the subject was going to be today, I said, hey, Emily, do you mind if I kind of squeeze in there and sit in your chair? Because when Dr. Melinda Connor and David Schmidt, our founder, inventor, and CEO, get together, sparks fly. And I just wanted to be a fly on the wall for this one. So thanks very much to Emily for graciously letting me sit in on this one. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. As you know, LifeWave Connect is every other week, and it's a great opportunity for you to engage and to connect with LifeWave Corporate, as we talk about business aspects or all kinds of information about products. And today, we're going to be talking about product and energy science, the science of integrative medicine. Dr. Melinda Connor, of course, I'll get to her introduction in just a minute. She has just been there, done that in so many ways in the world of research and sciences of several types. And I look forward to you having and being able to listen to some great information today. Of course, as far as interpretation, for all of our friends around the world, you see the button at the bottom of your screen. Whatever language you'd like to listen in, you generally can. So be sure to check that out as you want to listen in your native language. And this will be is broadcasting live into our corporate Facebook page. And a little bit later today will be placed into our Business Builder group. So there's the housekeeping. If you don't mind, I'd like to bring on David. Of course, David Schmidt, our founder, inventor, CEO. For those of you who are brand new to the company, this is the gentleman behind this amazing science. And when he and I first met, in the neighborhood of 15, 16 years ago, when there were so many skeptics that he was running into all the time, those were interesting days. And now, David, I'm sure as you think about where we are today and what's going on today and the nature of the elite scientists that are picking up the phone and calling you on a regular basis, my, how times change, huh?
My, how times change indeed. It only took 80 or 90 clinical studies over the last 20 years for people to think, well, maybe there might be something to the patches and light therapy. Jim, it's so interesting that if we go back about 12, 13 years ago, light therapy was still considered pseudoscience. Yep. Now, today, there are over 5,000 clinical studies that have been published on the benefits of light therapy. The mechanism of action is well known. And Michael Hamblin at Harvard University, who's one of the leading researchers in this field, has over 400 clinical studies that are published in this area. So light therapy has definitely come into the modern age as something scientific. And of course, the amazing thing about this is that we can change and improve people's quality of life in some extraordinary ways with light therapy.
No question about it. And when you think about what the future holds, which I'm sure you and Dr. Connor will get into a little bit. I mean, folks, we sit on the threshold of some amazing things, amazing opportunities for LifeWave. And part of the reason is because of what you do, David, when you get with research scientists and you lay out what you would like to try to learn more about in a clinical study, a pilot study, that kind of thing. And so scientists at elite levels, you've worked with many over the years, and Dr. Melinda Connor is one of them. And I'd like to go ahead and bring her on now. Folks, if you haven't had the chance to meet Melinda, she's very comfortable being called Melinda. She doesn't have to be a Dr. Connor. She's just a great person and loves to talk with anybody about anything. And Dr. Connor, I'm going to make you blush here as I say a few things about, if you go back to...
I started out blushing right away. Thank you, Jim. Hi, David.
Hey, Melinda.
Melinda, let me just let the folks know a few things about you. You're trained as a clinical psychologist, a neuropsychologist. You originally were an engineer in the world of computers, and you changed careers in the 90s and decided to go into this, what has to be a fascinating world of being a research scientist, where you kind of get to pick and choose who you want to work with, and you get to work with the greats across the world, and what a wonderful thing that has to be. Plus, you're only an author of 10 books, and you've just integrative medicine, you've studied under the greats. I mean, you just know so much about so many different things. I can only imagine what happens when you and David get into a room by yourselves and start kicking things around, which is what this is going to be about today, right? And we're so excited about it. And one last thing I want to mention, folks, just recently, 2021, Dr. Connor was named Scientist of the Year amongst 30 countries at the Qigong World Conference of 2021. So we are in the presence of greatness when it comes to science, research science, and all that means. And just back from the Nobel, what is it, the Nobel Prize Summit? My goodness, Melinda, you do get around, and it's so great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a joy to be here with LifeWave again.
Great. And you know, David, I'm going to be a fly on the wall. Do you want me to stick around to be part of the conversation? Would you like me to jump away and you guys just kind of get into it? What works for you guys?
Oh, I think we can get into it, Jim.
All right. I'll jump away, and folks, get in. Here comes some really interesting next 45 minutes or so, and great to have you on board.
Thank you, Jim. Very much appreciated. And Melinda, thank you so much for taking your valuable time to do this today. I know that you're super busy in the lab doing research. I'm very envious of that you get to do that, but we really appreciate you taking the time to be here. So thank you.
It's my pleasure. It's a joy to come on and have these dialogues. I kind of treasure them.
Well, you know, let's start at the beginning. And the beginning, I think, will be very interesting, because one of the things in our community is that we talk about is that we want people to know what their why is, why they're doing something. Frame of mind is so important. And people should know when they're getting involved in our business and our community, why is it that they're here? Are they trying to earn a little bit extra money? Do they want to make the world a better place? You know, maybe it's a combination. But you've been interested and involved in science your entire life. So what was your why, and what first got you interested in science?
Actually, I come from both sides, both parents. So my dad was at Harvard Medical School, and he actually was one of the people that founded the whole field of highway safety research. If you go back and look at the book Unsafe at Any Speed, that book was based on my dad's work at Harvard, and it actually got Ralph Nader started. Ralph Nader wrote the book, and it got him started on the whole process of Nader's Raiders. And on the other side, my mother was a physician, and she taught at Boston University Medical School and worked in the Boston community. She was a psychiatrist. And so science was kind of ordinary and regular in our household growing up, but it was actually an interesting mix too, because the energy pieces were there. My father could talk to cars. He was psychometric. Oh. And they would actually talk to him. And my mother was a precog, and she worked a lot with schizophrenia. And this is back in the 1940s and 1950s. And there were no medications in those days. So the fact that she would get these amazing precognitive flashes of insight on how to help her patients was something she used. So I got a chance to blend all of this from the beginning.
Okay, so that's interesting. So that probably makes sense then, how you got started in energy medicine and what your interest was in energy medicine as opposed to going the route of becoming a medical doctor and a traditional Western practitioner.
My grandmother actually started me off really in energy medicine. My mother's mother's mother comes out of the traditions of European women who were the chatelaines, the keepers of the big estates. And part of their job was to keep the still room and keep the people on the estate healthy. And so at the age of 4, in my grandmother's rose garden, I was learning how to ground and how to breathe and how to run energy back and forth through my hands, because women on feast days were expected to produce miracles. you had the right to rule if you were touched by God and could produce the miracles. So I was literally taught that. And I thought that was normal and average part of the process. I kind of left it behind. You know, when you get teenage and early adult, you're being very independent, you know, and I left it behind until I tried to get pregnant and found out I was in a high risk pregnancy. And then went back to my roots, learning the energy medicine again, rebuilding the skills.
Oh, amazing.
And was lucky enough to have my daughter.
Yeah, and you have an amazing daughter. I want to talk about Kate in a few minutes. In the field of energy medicine, you know, I think a lot of people tend to think of it as woo-woo, right? That, okay, somebody's just waving their hands and they're kind of hoping something's going to happen. But what's extraordinary is the massive amount of scientific data that exists today to support and substantiate energy medicine. And you and I have both had the privilege of being around some extraordinary people, Norm Shealy, Gaetan Chevalier, Beverly Rubik, Carl Merritt, you know, really very, very great researchers in this field. What are some of the studies that you've seen over the years where you've said, okay, this is really, this metric is definitive proof that we have an energy field, it exists, and you know, we can apply it in some very interesting ways?
Actually, that's kind of a trick question because
Oh.
I've both had a chance to work with all of the people that you've mentioned, which is, you know, just amazing and marvelous experience. So they've all, every single person that you mentioned, have all done cutting edge research in this area. And some of the really lovely stuff is also done by Gary Schwartz, who did a lot of EEG work, looking at brain connections between practitioners and clients. The work that Margaret Moa has done is very fine work. The work that Bill Bankston has done on mouse models and placebo control, working with cancer, superb work. So we've got some really, really talented people doing really careful science. And when you break down the energy medicine work, what you're really talking about is hunter skills, tracking skills, hunting skills, the ability to feel out where's the food supply at a distance, get to it faster, and be able to bring it home to your group faster, costing yourself less calories. That's really where the energy skills start. And it's electrodermal skin response, which we're only touching on now. And actually, that's part of the extraordinary work that LifeWave does, is dancing with the electrodermal skin response and the whole electricity of the nervous system and how fascia conducts and muscles react and the metabolism rebalances. It's really, really extraordinary.
So let's dig into this. So when we're talking about energy medicine, there are a number of different layers there and effects that we can see. So, and these of course are all measurable. So as you pointed out, there are bioelectrical fields surrounding the body, and these can vary based on tissue conductivity. We have energy flowing through the meridian system. We know quite a bit about the meridians today and its relationship to infrared light. There's, of course, then with the presence of an electrical field, an electromagnetic field, and these are observable with squid magnetometers. But since our community is interested in light therapy, I might want to discuss just for a moment a study that we did years ago with Carl Merritt and Gaetan. And this was looking at biophoton emission. So we had taken people, put their hands in a room that's completely dark, use a photomultiplier tube, and then measure the light coming off the hand. And we were able to correlate with this study that when using the energy patches, the body was going into a higher state of coherence, and this was changing the way the cells were emitting light. So that to me was a really excellent study because it was showing one of the many relationships between light and the health of the body?
We did a whole series of studies when I was doing my postdoctoral fellowship at University of Arizona in the program in integrative medicine under Dr. Andrew Weil and Dr. Iris Bell. And I was working as a part of Dr. Gary Schwartz's lab and with an optical scientist, Dr. Catherine Preth. And we were using a camera that actually had to be super cooled down to minus 80 degrees C to be able to get these images. Now, Tucson in the summer goes to 120 degrees, and you can imagine the time of the night that we were working in the laboratory so we could get these images. But our data matched that. Our data was very clear that what we were seeing was an evolution and a change, a signal boost, and an increase in coherence across the board when we looked at anything that would photomultiply, anything that would charge the electromagnetic field up. And one of the interesting factors in that whole kind of process that your group may not know about is you have to make the rooms absolutely light tight. And so when you're making these rooms, you sit in the dark for 4 or 5 hours, and then you look for these little pinholes of light that you see after 4 or 5 hours, and you mask them all up and everything else. It becomes a really interesting journey to try and take these images.
Yeah, you know, the other interesting thing about this is when we're talking about light therapy, and I happened to have this conversation with Jim Caldwell earlier today, is when I started the company, light therapy was in the realm of pseudoscience, despite the fact that the DARPA, Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency here in the US, had been giving over $10 million to the US Navy to look at light therapy and regeneration. And this was in the 1990s. So clearly the Navy was convinced back then that light therapy was real and there were legitimate effects. So that was a government secret at that time. Kind of like I heard today President Obama come out and say, yes, UFOs are real. I knew about that when I was in office. Yeah, you know, in the not too distant past, if you said you saw a UFO, you were considered crazy. So it's funny how, you know, these times change. But, you know, when we're talking about these diagnostic techniques, when you and I are discussing a study, one of the things that I really enjoy is that we combine traditional blood, urine, saliva tests with some of the bioelectrical tests, because then we say, okay, we saw these changes in the bioelectrical system in the body, but we also measured these changes in the blood. And that to me makes for a very strong study. And then the outcome and the benefits to the people using the products become much more clear.
I'm actually looking forward. We have a paper submitted. It's not in press yet, but we have a paper submitted that actually runs the gamut. And it includes psychophysiological measures. It includes the oldest designed biofeedback physiological measuring suite that was developed actually in Quebec, Canada, by a group called Thought Technologies. And so it's highly reliable, been there for, 40 years plus, and it's a very solid piece of equipment. And at the same time, we were taking blood and saliva measurements, so that we were looking at a comprehensive experience of what were the physiological changes that were going on in terms of the people experiencing the patch. And the data is lovely.
Yeah, this is probably a good opportunity to talk about Caitlin, because we had the pleasure of having her be a speaker at our pre-COVID conference on X39. And of course, she did a magnificent job in the presentation, and then also with the study. So let's talk about that in a second. But I have worked with both of my adult children, and it is rewarding and challenging, at the same time. But I know you must be very, very proud of her, and she's an incredible young woman.
It's a delight. And what was the coolest thing was I got to know her as an adult when she came back to do her work, during the COVID crisis, rather than going back and forth to the University of Oxford in the UK, where she was doing her postdoctoral fellowship. She was home and doing the telecommuting instead to classes. And so I've had an opportunity to be working with her this last year and actually some of the time the year before. And it's just been wonderful. She's such a deliciously complex person, and got so many facets to her. And I get a chance to see her grow in her intellectual understanding and her capacity to understand the science. And actually, I think it was 2 weeks ago, it may have been 3, she was at the Traditional Medicine Conference and presented a theory of the application of the use of copper on COVID-19 and
yes,
what it could do biochemically. So, it's just very wonderful to see her blossoming in all sorts of different ways. And she just was first author on a paper for you guys.
Yes, absolutely.
Where she did,
and
blood study, wonderful blood study.
I don't want to brush over this.
And the updated paper is out.
Yes, and I don't want to brush over this because, as I recall, Oxford had solicited in the neighborhood of 20,000 people that were interested in a research program, and Caitlin was one of those people that was selected for the research program, if I remember correctly.
They took 20 out of 20,000. That was the data that we were given. Yeah. And Caitlin was one of the 20. So it was an extraordinary opportunity. Yeah. She has been so very lucky in that whole process.
Yeah, it's incredibly impressive. So talking about, talking about that study that she did for us, that was you had presented the urine study that we did, which showed the metabolism that takes place with X39, and Caitlin presented the blood data. And what was amazing about that was how both sets of data lined up, in the sense that we could see within 24 hours the formation of GHK, then later the formation of GHK-Cu, and the metabolism of the body was changing within the same window of time, where we saw upregulation of utilization of amino acids, so better muscle protein synthesis, improvement in quality of sleep, and et cetera. And so this data for us has been so very important, because we can look at it and say, okay, now we have a basis for not only claiming that the patch elevates copper peptide, but look at all the incredible things that it does.
We can show it definitively in the science in this study. Now, science loves repeated studies. So over the period of time, we actually ended up doing, I think, a total of 7 directly on the X39 patch, so that we repeated the data and repeated the data and repeated the data, so that we got good confirmation in that series. And it's been very exciting to look at this, because triggering the GHK resets 4,000 genes in the body. And it takes those genes and moves them back, so you're like 22 again. That's really luscious.
Yeah, that's a good.
And then when you look at the GHK-Cu triggering stem cell production and clear increase in the production of GHK-Cu, clear increase over 7 days. That's very, very fast. These are very small molecules, and these are very big increases for very small molecules. That's very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? I'm sorry, please finish.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, what's exciting to me about this is that we have a path now to age reversal. And the path of being able to, in a practical sense, stay young and healthy for potentially a very, very long period of time. And I think copper peptide is going to be the first product that we release that's a powerful gene modulator. But of course, there's other work that you and I are looking at that we'll get to in a minute. But we're at the forefront of something very, very interesting. We have universities like Harvard and Stanford that are exploring mechanisms of NAD and how they can alter gene expression and get cells to look like younger, healthier cells. And some of that work yet is still many years away from making its way into a drug that people can use. But we have this product today, and that people can use and achieve youth renewal, as we would call it.
It's very, very interesting how rapidly this product works. Normally you'd expect over months that you would see a change, but to see a change within 7 days, to see a change within 14 days, that's very, very fast. And to have the genes reset across the body, 4,000 genes reset across the body. One of the big things Norm Shealy did was looking at the whole question of telomeres, which is the ends of chromosomes that break off as we age. And that's part of how we age. Well, if you take and reset all those genes, they're not breaking off the same way. They're acting in a robust manner. So you're slowing down the process where the body is breaking down. Instead, you're helping it reset, reboost, and move forward again in a really positive way. That's exciting.
It's incredibly exciting. And, I speak with Norm relatively frequently. We dialogue by email, and we exchange some thoughts on age reversal, which he's very, very interested in and researching, of course. And what's interesting is that LifeWave is focused on mitochondrial function as a pathway to practical youth renewal. And I think that the evidence is that as we upregulate mitochondrial function, we can alter gene expression and improve quality of life in a significant way, and maybe restore some of the things that we lose to time. So the future is definitely incredible.
It's actually really to drop these wonderful nuggets. I get to sit in the presence of someone who's a genius, and I grew up at Harvard, so I'm used to that kind of environment, and BU and MIT and all of that. And so you drop these wonderful nuggets about step is in creating the vision and manifesting it now. And I just love to hear it when you do that.
Well, it's I don't know if I have a fear of old age, or it's an intellectual challenge, or what the issue is. But when I was very young, and I would get together with my Italian relatives, something inside me said, I will never look like that. I will never become that. And they were, of course, older and a little bit frail. And so I've had this kind of thought inside me for quite a while, and have looked at this subject. And as we get into our research, what's so very interesting is that as we favorably enhance mitochondrial function, a number of different things can occur. So, for example, the first product that we released, of course, was Energy Enhancer. and it's designed to elevate fat burning. But we had discovered there are anti-aging benefits to this. And we're doing some research right now. I threw a hint at you the other day with a new patch that's going into development. But this will be, once you and I have a chance to dig into the mechanism, I'm looking at a number of signaling peptides in the cell that would be able to significantly upregulate fat burning and mitochondrial function. And the net end benefit to that is we see enhanced or altered gene expression. So this is very much along the lines of what we see from people like David Sinclair. Of course, he's very focused on NAD, but of course there's other peptides, there's other molecules in the cell to look at as well. But you know, one thing I think we should mention is that you and I have been very fortunate in partnering with a number of laboratories. And in some cases, like in the case of X39, there was no standardized testing for copper peptide. We literally had to seek out 2 different laboratories and spend months developing protocols where we could even analyze that. That was a little bit frustrating in the beginning.
It was very interesting. We actually went back to the professor that found the original molecule, the original, and he was very supportive and actually gave us copies of the original master's work so that the laboratories could develop the protocols. And it took a long time. It took most of a year to get the protocols and get the protocols right. And one of the things that's been really interesting in taking the data, in addition, is that you take blood and we're taking blood and putting it in the centrifuge and then taking the plasma to be able to get the peptide.
Oh, let's see. We may have lost Melinda. She seemed to be having a problem with her internet. So we'll wait a moment and hopefully that she will come back on. What she was describing was the process that we, oh, here we go.
I'm thinking.
Yeah, Melinda, I think if you keep your video off, maybe it'll be a little okay. The bandwidth seems to be a little low. Oh, there we go. Now you're clear.
Okay. So we had to work very, very fast in order to get these really tiny molecules that are still in the process of undergoing metabolism at the time. So it was very exciting.
Melinda, unfortunately, the sound at your end is going in and out. But we were just coming, I think, to the end of the interview, and Jim and I were going to cover a number of other things. So I think then this would probably be a good opportunity to thank you for your time and for being here today. And I know our members really enjoyed it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I look forward to connecting with all of you in the future.
Absolutely. We're going to love having you at a live event.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Melinda.
Thanks, Melinda. Yeah, gosh, you know, sometimes technology does step on things, but I think what we'll probably do is work toward to perhaps next time maybe putting in a place where signal strong, video strong, and just kind of do it a little bit at a higher level.
Yeah, well, at least we did get to go through the bulk of it, which is great. You know, the one thing that I didn't have a chance to really cover with her was the future patches. And I'm not going to give anything away, but we are working on a number of different products, and we've gotten to the phase where we've tested these things. We're producing favorable outcomes. They're in the realm of stem cells and regeneration. And Jim, I think, you know, what's so exciting is we're finding new ways to activate stem cells in the body and achieve effects that are different than X39 and enhance the benefits of X39. So definitely looking forward to sharing that with our members.
Yeah, and let me ask you a question about that, David, because I got to believe, I certainly wonder when you've come so far with your ability to target specific actions at the cellular level. You say, I think I can probably do this. Let me go try, and then your preliminary tests indicate, oh my gosh, yes, it's doing exactly what I intended. How do you go about choosing, where you want to focus the technology as you consider? There must be a broad array of what you actually could do with the patches, but you have to choose. Is there a way in which you make that determination?
Yeah, there's 1,000 different directions that you can go in. I'd have to say first you have to start with prayer, right? And you have to recognize God is the source of all knowledge, and that we don't really do anything in our own power or information. We should be praying and asking for that blessing. And I feel that I've been very, very fortunate to have received guidance in this area. And so in looking at what direction to go in, our company for the next 3 to 5 years is focused on releasing new products in the field of stem cells and regeneration. And there is going to be another phase beyond that. Once we're activating stem cells, we're regenerating the body. There's some other interesting things that we can do that I'm looking forward to getting into. But at this point in time, the goal is to reverse biological age. And so this isn't so necessarily that if people want to live to be 500 or 1,000 years old, that's going to be the path to do it. We don't know yet about how high up is, but imagine how amazing life would be if we didn't have to worry about aging. I think that's really the message. It's increasing not only lifespan, but health span. So if people can be 100, 120 or more years old, but still look like they're 30 years old, why wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Healthcare costs come down, quality of life goes up, the old age homes become a thing of the past. And people that are at that age have a wealth of lifetime experience. Think about the things they've seen and learned, and they can enrich the younger generation and hopefully make the world a better place. So, then it becomes a question of how do we really achieve these things? And my focus is on mitochondrial function. And, we don't have the time to really get into it today, but the type of mechanisms that I look at is how can we get the power plant of the cell? You think of this like the engine in a car. If we take an old car and we put a brand new engine in it, the car is going to perform like a brand new car, right? More or less. So the same thing with the cell. If we can get the power plant of the cell to function like a 25-year-old cell, 25-year-old body, then the cells are going to perform that way. And naturally, people are going to feel better. They will heal more quickly. And their cells will resemble younger cells. So, so at that point, it's really looking at the biochemistry of the mitochondria and then selecting specific mechanisms to activate that would change over time. And we've been very, very successful with this, with the products that are already out. And we've certainly had success with new products that our members aren't aware of.
Yeah, and you started with mitochondria back with Energy Enhancer, right? That was your first foray into that,
Right.
Correct?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And that, at the time, while age reversal was a desire, I was very, very far away from thinking about that as a, practical avenue to achieve. I was really just looking at, hey, we've got these Navy SEALs. They're taking stimulants. They have to be awake 30, 60 hours. Maybe there's a way that we could improve their energy so they don't have to take these stimulants. That was my mindset. And where it's led has been incredible.
So it's been an odyssey of discovery, even for yourself. There were things you had no idea the technology could do. because you hadn't even had the chance to think about it yet. You had to focus and begin the journey. And now here you are. What has surprised you about the science that you've created, David? What, even you, right? What has, when you've, had a breakthrough, you've seen the technology work, how have you been surprised? Because I know we're always surprised when you come out, with the next iteration of the technology. What surprises you?
Yeah, so I think a number of things. There's always doors to open up where you say, I'm not sure if I can do that. And then you get a favorable result, and that becomes very, very exciting. X39 is certainly a great example. It's not the only example. It's a great example because we spent 10 years in research, and I was really convinced at that time that we couldn't get to stem cell enhancement with the patch. I really felt that this was going to occur through a active electromagnetic device. As you know, I have over 70 patents on this now. And the good news is that we were successful with electromagnetically manipulating and enhancing stem cells and doing this all non-invasively. So what was so surprising was after spending 10 years and over $4 million, that we could do it with the patch after all. That was one of the paths that we went down. And that was a huge surprise to me that we could do it with the patch. And the best part about that is you say, okay, I thought this wasn't possible, and now we find out it is. So what other things should we be looking at that I might think today isn't possible? And why don't we knock on that door and test to see if we can achieve it? So I'm looking at one of those mechanisms right now. You've heard me say, okay, we've got this new patch. I don't know if we're going to be able to do this, but if we do, this is the gold at the end of the rainbow. And it's a huge pot of gold.
So it's like running the 4-minute mile, it sounds like to me. You actually, think about it, a person does it, you break the 4-minute barrier, and next thing you know, everyone's doing it. Everyone can run faster than 4 minutes. So even in your mind, when the X39 came along and you had that discovery and you had that aha moment, that opened up your mind to additional possibilities, it sounds like.
Yeah, Richard Quick, who was on our staff when we first started, used to talk about that actually all the time, about the 4-minute mile. And it is all about mindset. What do you believe you can achieve? And that's so important in our industry when it comes, as you know, when it comes to business building. You've had an amazing career. Really, when you think about the things that you've achieved, $1.5 billion in sales with the projects you've been associated with, it's extraordinary. And, and you're recognized in the direct selling industry, you're in the Hall of Fame, and you didn't do that without having a positive can-do mindset. And so for our distributors, it's so important that they have belief in themselves, that they plan, they're persistent, patient, and but they set objectives and they believe that they can succeed. So the mindset component, I think, of anything that you're going to do in life has to be in place first.
Yeah, and even for you, see, folks, think about what he's saying there. We look at David and think, gosh, he's so knowledgeable in the world of science. He has a sense of the future. He has a sense of the direction he's taking it. But David, you're pointing out, even you're surprised, even you're taken aback, even you go, wait a second, I didn't know that. I mean, you're making discoveries all the time. The conversations you have with scientists that call you and ask you questions, I've got to believe they stimulate you and take you into new territories, new areas that you perhaps hadn't thought of exploring before. As they ask you questions, well, could you do this? Does that happen?
Not often. It has, but now, usually, and I'm not saying that to build myself up. That is not the point. Usually when you speak with some of these doctors, they're brilliant people. They're highly focused in one direction. And, that direction might be on better ways of looking at pain management. We have been in dialogue with a very, very famous university, and they're looking at exploring clinical research with us. We just signed an agreement with a major university. Everyone would know. We're keeping it confidential at the moment, but they're looking at a very interesting mechanism in the patch. And, you know, the thing is, I had this experience too when I was developing products for the Navy through government contractors, is that when you're working out on the fringe, which we are, right? There's no other companies in the world doing exactly the same kind of research as we are. Finding first people that are like-minded is very, very difficult. There's very few researchers. The other side to it is that because researchers aren't in this area, they're not thinking along the lines of what would be possible with the technology. They're really coming to me and saying, well, what do you think is possible?
I see.
So, but that all said, you know, the value of collaboration and working with incredible people like Melinda Connor is that we get to discuss how can we further this research. So Melinda is, of course, depending on me to be the inventor and create the patches. And then I get to collaborate with her and say, okay, this patch, this new patch, X something, is designed to do this. And let's take a look at how we can put together a research plan to prove that this is doing what it's designed to do. And that aspect of the collaboration works extremely, extremely well.
You know, and then you take everything we've just talked about, you take all that you know, and yet think about someone who's joined the business in the last week or month, right? And they're listening to this conversation for the first time, and they don't really have a handle on how to talk about the technology yet. They're not necessarily really comfortable yet with how to talk about it. And frankly, you take a look at the seasoned veteran who's been around the technology for a long time, and they, from time to time, think to themselves, gee, is there a simpler way I should be talking about this? Do I want to actually try to pretend like I'm an expert, or should I just kind of say the basics and let me tell you what happened to me? How would you, knowing what you know now and how far our company as in terms of our growth, our size now, our scale, our rate of growth, how would you talk about it if you were talking to someone new in the business? How would you describe the science? What would you suggest they say to keep it simple, to have the individual they're speaking with want to lean forward and learn more? Because that in the end is all we really want. And in the end, we want them to try the product. We want them to try X39. What would you suggest they be saying about the science? How would you talk about it?
Yes, I would exactly say that first is that the message needs to be as simple and as clear as possible. And people should be able to articulate what the patch does in as few words as possible. So I can think of many conversations I've had with people in airports, on planes. You know, this is before people were afraid of COVID, right? Where you could actually talk to people without wearing a mask. But I would say, when someone would ask me what I do, I'd say, I work for a company and we have a product that activates stem cells with light. And, you know, you're hitting a few hot buttons there. First, people are interested in stem cells. They know what they are. They think of them as injection. They know what light is, but stimulating stem cells with light, what is that? How does that work exactly? And then I might say, well, we have a patch. You apply it to the body. It stimulates the skin with light, just like the way sunlight causes the body to make vitamin D, but this is designed to activate stem cells. So that's one way to go about doing it. Before X39, the conversations that I would have with people would be around pain relief. And I would say something along the lines of, we have a new technology to relieve pain with light, and we can reduce pain by 50 to 100% in only 2 to 3 minutes. And again, that checks a lot of boxes because people know what pain is. They've experienced it. They know what light is. But the idea that you're going to relieve pain in 2 or 3 minutes with light, how does that work? Right. So, so it kind of builds up interest. It keeps it simple and direct. And it doesn't say too much. You know, sometimes you have to give people just a little bit to keep them curious. You know, don't overwhelm them. And I find those things to work pretty well.
And we've always got to be careful about claims, don't we? I mean, we have to, as a company, as an individual, we've always got to be sensitive about the claims. And that's an area that, as a company, in our materials and the way in which we train and the way in which leaders train folks within their group, within their downline, we've always got to be sensitive to making sure let's not mention diseases. Let's not make any medical claims, and that framing is really important to us and our ability to continue to make sure we go down the pathway of safety in the eyes of regulatory and all that, huh?
Yes, this is the challenging part, right? Is that you and I work with attorneys to make sure that the claims we're making that are all legal and compliant. So this protects everyone in the company. And so, let's use an example for the sake of using it. There are some cases where legitimately people use X39 and they experience hair growth. And it's really impressive and it's really obvious that this happened. The problem is that hair growth is a medical claim, that according to the FDA in the United States and many other countries. So even though this might be something we observe, we don't have clinical studies to support it. So we don't know with what frequency it happens. And also, even if we could support that with a clinical study, we can't make the claim because then the FDA will say, oh, you have a drug or you have a medical device. This is not a wellness product. So then we would have an issue. So yeah, it's exciting to see things that the product does. And as you know, it's very frustrating not to be able to talk about all the benefits, but we do it to protect everyone.
Yeah. And not to get sidetracked by that, but just pointing out that as we talk about the science, as we talk about the opportunity, we do want to be careful about claims. Well, gosh, what a joy, David. I know everyone always enjoys spending time and hearing you, and especially when you get a chance to rub shoulders with someone like Dr. Melinda Connor and everything she knows. What's interesting about her, David, you can tell that she really respects the science, right? She really, it's not like you just call her up and say, hey, I've got another job for you. And she says, okay, I can fit you in. No, she's excited. She's excited when you call because she really
Melinda and Caitlin are amazing. They're incredibly competent. Now, as we were talking about her daughter, Caitlin, she was one of 20 people out of 20,000 to get into a research program. So she's at the top of the top. So we are very privileged to be able to work with both of them. And they love the frontiers that we're exploring together and what this means. And, at the end of the day, what this means is that we get to improve people's quality of life in some dramatic ways, take what we've learned and use it to build the next generation of products that build on that. And yeah, that's super exciting. And we're really fortunate that we have people like Melinda and Caitlin to work with.
And when you think about the decision you made 16, 17 years ago to use network marketing as the distribution model for the science, and here we are now 17 years later, doing things that pretty much you've indicated, no one else is out here on the edge. No one else is out here in this frontier doing this type of science. And yet every person listening to this call has the opportunity to take what this is so special, so unique, and be able to tell the story of LifeWave wrapped around their own story of experience using the technology. What an interesting choice you made 17 years ago, David, and here we are now.
Well, I think I was divinely guided. I'd like to think again through prayer and being thankful to God that I was led down this path. And it's been incredibly rewarding to be part of the network marketing industry, the people that we meet and that we get an opportunity to meet. As a result, I can't think of any other business model and direction that we could have gone in where we would have achieved this level of success and have people now all over the world using this technology and these products. So it's you have to give thanks where thanks is due.
Yeah, well, Indeed, and thank you for that, David. So, gosh, is there anything else as we finish up here that you'd like to say before we close this out, David? Any last words of wisdom?
Well, I'm not going to ever be short of words, Jim. It's when we're talking about these subjects. Yeah, there is so much craziness that's going on in the world today. We have the conflict over in Israel. We have, we're just coming out of a pandemic. A lot of people are really scared about what's going to happen on the world stage. They're scared about the economy, and are they going to be able to get back to work? And first thing is there's always hope, and we have, of course, an opportunity where people can build a business, be self-sufficient, and help people in the process. I once saw an interview with Warren Buffett, and Warren Buffett had said the best protection against a recession or a depression is to have your own business and have that as an income, because as prices change, as conditions change, as long as you have a product that's valuable that people need, that business will always help you weather the storm of these economic changes. And it was interesting, he could have said, invest in stocks, invest in gold, or what have you, but it was really this idea of self-reliance. So given that, we're creating a business opportunity based on our technology that's exclusive to our members, that to me gives people hope that they can support themselves and protect themselves and their families from whatever is going to come and be around the corner. And then the last thing is, of course, I'm a Christian, and the message that Jesus gave us of loving one another. If we all loved one another and we looked at the world as wanting to help and support one another, what an amazing world we would live in. And as we're building this business, I asked Melinda what was her why is she doing things. It's fine to be in our business to earn money, but we really need to look beyond that. And I hope that one of the things that people are thinking about of why they're here and not someplace else is because they get an opportunity to help others and set them on a path of a healing journey and give them hope when maybe they had lost hope. And that, of course, can take shape in a variety of different ways. They're pain relief or wound healing or just getting a good night's sleep. So people can be happy in knowing that they're part of the solution.
Well said, David. Thank you very much for your ability to articulate, your ability to speak to the issues that really are important and what give people hope here at LifeWave. I know that every time we have an opportunity to connect with you and connect with the future, it's always very, very uplifting. So thank you very much. And so I'll see you soon. And folks, this has been a great conversation. I don't need to tell you that you were a witness to some fantastic information. And David, thank you very much. We'll be recircling back to this in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for being with us. And we just wish you all Godspeed as you continue. As David said, amidst this crazy world, there is hope, and it's all wrapped up with LifeWave. So continued success. And as Zig Ziglar, the famous sales trainer, always has said, we'll see you at the top. Thanks all. Have a great day. Have a great night.